This podcast is sponsored by Talkspace. You know when you're really stressed or not feeling so great about your life or about yourself? Talking to someone who understands can really help. But who is that person? How do you find them? Where do you even start? Talkspace. Talkspace makes it easy to get the support you need. With Talkspace, you can go online, answer a few questions about your preferences, and be matched with a therapist. And because you'll meet your therapist online, you don't have to take time off work or arrange childcare. You'll meet on your schedule, wherever you feel most at ease. If you're depressed, stressed, struggling with a relationship, or if you want some counseling for you and your partner, or just need a little extra one-on-one support, Talkspace is here for you. Plus, Talkspace works with most major insurers, and most insured members have a $0 copay. No insurance? No problem. Now get $80 off of your first month with promo code SPACE80 when you go to Talkspace.com. Match with a licensed therapist today at Talkspace.com. Save $80 with code SPACE80 at Talkspace.com.
Now Taxes is 100% free when you file in the TurboTax app if you didn't file with us last year.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, just do your own taxes in the app by 2/18.
What if I have lots of forms?
All good, all 100% free.
What if I had 3 jobs?
Still 100% free.
What if I once saw Bigfoot?
That has nothing to do with taxes, so still 100% free.
Now that's what I'm talking about.
Now this is Taxes. See if you qualify in the TurboTax app. Excludes TurboTax Live, must start and file in app by 2/18.
Good evening, everybody. John Hendricks alongside Ross Jackson for another episode of Second and Saints. Thank you so much for tuning in. Hopefully you guys survived the ice Arctic blast that New Orleans is known for and all that good stuff. Ross, you're here in one piece, so I assume you did okay with it.
I made it through cold weather.
Yeah, me too.
I did it.
I think I'm paying for it right now. I was telling Ross before the show, I got my nice little hottie toddy right now because I'm having a coughing fit. So, we're not built for all that craziness down there. But how you doing, man?
I'm good, man. I'm good. I'm glad to be here with you. And what an exciting, strange day, and what an exciting, strange week upcoming. So we'll see how things go. How are you holding up?
Yeah, man, I'm good, dude. So it's the thing is, like, now you're looking at Senior Bowls next week. It's interesting. You got some Saints coaches there. Whether they're going to stay there after the new coach comes in, that's going to be another thing to think about. It just reminds me of Declan Doyle last year, like coaching up the tight end group, and then he's like, "Oh, he's going to Denver." Okay, but man, pretty crazy, I guess I'd say. And like you said, just a very eventful time, right? Like the snowstorm delayed some of these in-person interviews. The Saints don't even get a chance to talk to Aaron Glenn for a second time, an in-person interview. Now they got, Anthony Weaver that they did an in-person interview with, and then they did Mike Kafka, and then they did Darren Rizzi previously. So they're up to 3. They have not done anything with Mike McCarthy yet, but now looking at Saturday evening, if you will, or Saturday night, depending on what time your time zone you're in, Joe Brady's pulling out, and we don't know about what Cliff Kingsbury's going to do right now. Like he already told teams he was going to put on hold, which we said on a previous episode, that was great for him, but New Orleans is the only team that's open right now. Is the hair on fire right now? Like what should everybody make of this? Because this is not a good look.
Yeah, I think it depends, right? Like if you were somebody that wanted Joe Brady, then hair's on fire at the moment, for sure. If you're somebody that didn't want Joe Brady as the head coach and maybe were, more affixed to a Mike McCarthy or an Anthony Weaver or even a Darren Rizzi, then you're probably right now feeling just fine because that's okay. But I think that the big concerning thing here is what you highlighted, that this is now the second head coach that didn't even give the Saints a second interview, or really not even a second interview, but like a first in-person interview. Like and both of them are guys that had connections to the organization, right? And so that to me is the thing, not the remaining candidate list, because there's still fine and good options on that candidate list. You and I are both pro Weaver guys, for instance. But I think the bigger concern is that the idea of connectivity, the idea of familiarity didn't even get these guys to your city. I think that to me is the biggest concern.
Yeah. No, I'm with you. I think it's just really bizarre, right? Like, I think that's obviously the thing. And look, we said this about Aaron Glenn at first, that, he had to say yes to the Saints in the first place, right? And New York, they had a better opportunity. Like, they had a better situation for him. I know that's not what some Saints people don't want to hear, but if I'm looking at the Jets situation and the Saints situation, I think the Jets have a little bit more upside there right now. And look, I think for Joe Brady, if this is your only choice, your only destination, yeah, I mean, you can just wait it out. Sans like what Ben Johnson did. And look, the coaching dominoes have fallen pretty quickly. Like the Liam Cohen thing going to Jacksonville, that went really quickly.
Wild situation.
Very weird how they kind of skirted the Rooney Rule. I hate when people say they satisfy the Rooney Rule, because that is just, yeah, we were compliant with it. But, anyways, that's a different conversation. But, he goes there. Schottenheimer goes to Dallas. Pete Carroll, who we talked about what could be a guy in New Orleans that I would have really liked. I think the Raiders are getting somebody good there, but Joe Brady just basically saying, nah, man, I'm good. Like, I'm going to stay where I'm at, and I'm going to keep working with Josh Allen, keep cooking with Sean McDermott. Hopefully we can get in the Super Bowl, do all this other stuff. But I mean, he doesn't have to leave. And look, this was a situation I said about Ben Johnson and Aaron Glenn. Like, if they were super close, I don't know if they would have left, it depending on the money situation. But, it's just not a good look, because, early on in this process, Mickey Loomis said that they don't have to sell this team. But right now, what you're looking at is it's either most likely going to be Mike McCarthy, or it most likely would be going back to Darren Rizzi, right? Like, I don't know that you're going to definitively say, oh, Cliff Kingsbury's still definitely in play. I don't know how serious it is with Mike Kafka. It doesn't seem like he's totally ready to be the guy yet, even though glowing endorsements, obviously, from his time in Kansas City. But and Anthony Weaver, we both really like him. I just don't know if he's going to get the opportunity.
Right. Yeah, he might be, a year away, 2 years away, whatever it might be. And so that might end up being the deciding factor there about how ready he is. I mean, that the thing that's so interesting about kind of where the Saints are right now is, like, are they a more appealing landing spot in 2027? And how does that begin to impact the potential of a hire in 2025? Right? Because you don't want to be the coach that shows up, struggles through all the salary cap stuff and the flipping of the roster and aging veterans being shed and bringing in young cores and things like that. And then all of a sudden in 2027, when you have all of the resources to finally really start building the team, are you concerned, if you're an incoming head coach now, that they might sell it off to somebody else at that time? Like, that's something I think everybody has to kind of be aware of in this situation, is that, like, the business is the business. And while New Orleans has proven to be patient, the NFL as a whole has proven to be very impatient. And so in that situation, like, yeah, you can look at the history of the organization, but that only takes you so far. Are you still concerned that that ends up being a thing if you're a candidate today, in terms of what your longevity actually looks like in a situation like this? Remove what the Saints have done in terms of patience before, remove the stability at the top of the organization, all those other things. None of that matters if what you're concerned about is, oh yeah, I'm going to struggle through all this. Then right when I have the resources to do everything that I want to do, they're going to hand it off to somebody else. I think that plays a role.
Yeah, I would not want to come in and look, they're getting a situation that's not ideal, right? Like, again, we've talked about this so much before the season ended, during the off season, that this team has this mentality that they still believe they can compete in a bad division, in a bad NFC, all this other stuff. But, obviously the concern is, you're going into a roster where, yes, there are a lot of question marks. And the fact is, Cam and DeMario and Tyron, if this is their last year and they come back to New Orleans, this is going to be their last year. And now it does look like maybe you are going to waste your time, right? Because, and look, I'm not saying that, people should be excited if they do land Mike McCarthy. Like, Mike McCarthy coming to New Orleans would still be a win. Like, I think I would say that for sure. I just don't think it's the sexy hire that people were talking about. Like everybody's foaming at the mouth for Ben Johnson. Everybody's foaming at the mouth for Aaron Glenn. Mike McCarthy's just like, look, he was in Dallas and yeah, he had some 12-5 seasons. He didn't really do so well. But I think from a familiarity perspective with Mickey Loomis, but his offense fits the Saints too. I just think that he can come in. He's just not the really sexy hire that you were hoping to get when this first cycle started, right?
Yeah, absolutely. The big thing that I always say with Mike McCarthy is that he's like the safe hire for New Orleans, for the team that would need to win in order to win over the fan base. Like that's all the situation would be. And I think that with Mike McCarthy, what he does is that he kind of raises your ceiling a little bit, but isn't a guy that gives you the impression that he's going to help you break through your ceiling, right? He'll raise your floor a little bit, but he's not going to necessarily help you break through your ceiling, excuse me. And so I think that like that's the measure, the enticing kind of, element of a Joe Brady, a Cliff Kingsbury, these offensive minded guys is that these offensive minded young guys is that like they're going to be the next wunderkind hire that's going to, start the next trend of whatever across the NFL and everything like that. And that's probably unlikely as an expectation, but I understand the idea of like wanting youth, wanting investment, wanting innovation, wanting somebody to come in and build something in their vision over a long period of time, as opposed to being a stopgap quarterback, or excuse me, stopgap head coach. I think that the thing that comes to mind with kind of the situation that New Orleans is in here is you can go with the safe hire. You can go with the guy that is, but maybe to a certain extent, you just kind of want to go to the guy that actually wants to be here at a certain point. Right. And like, that's like that to a certain extent becomes maybe the next biggest criteria at this point, or piece of the criteria is like Darren Rizzi took the job mid-season in the worst situation possible, coached 8 games and still wants to be here. Is that the exact opposite of a Joe Brady? Because at least he wants to be in the city. At least he wants to be with the team. Like, is that now the most important criteria? Because the guys have qualifications, but who actually wants to be here at this point maybe ends up being the biggest selling point for New Orleans.
Yeah, and the fact is now, with them being the last, horse to cross the finish line, whatever euphemism you want to say, they can pick their person, right? Like, I'm not saying they should take forever, but they can say, okay, this is kind of what our vision is. And look, I feel like the vision of this team is we want to compete in the NFC South. We want to try to put this thing together while we still do have a DeMario, Cam, and Tyron, and you might have Derek Carr as your quarterback. We'll talk about that whole speculative thing that the Giants thing, because that's all it is, guys. It was speculation, but people are treating it as truth. I get it. I understand. But again, Mike McCarthy is a guy that when he comes in, he runs a West Coast type of offense. It's very lots of elements of what the Saints have. And kind of what I think about is it reminds me of when Dennis Allen said when they needed to get rid of Pete Carmichael that they needed to try to modernize their offense, right? Like, this is just kind of what it is that, McCarthy can come in, he can run an offensive scheme, he can do all this thing. I just don't think it's as innovative, obviously, as what a Ben Johnson would do, or what a Joe Brady would do, or some of these other young-minded guys, like maybe even a Liam Cohen or something like that. But I think McCarthy could come in and run a team. And one of the things we've talked about is a CEO type of coach. I know McCarthy probably ends up calling the plays, right? Like, I don't think that's going to be a mysterious thing. I would like to see somebody, just like you said, previously on past episodes, somebody who comes in and just runs the team. If they did that with Darren Rizzi, he would be that guy. He would be the one that runs the team and get somebody to run the special teams, run the offense, run the defense, all that other good stuff. McCarthy would be, I'm running the offense. Now I got to find the guy that runs the defense. I think he has plenty of connections to get a good staff together. I don't know if I'd say that same with if they got a Rizzi in place. Like, I know Rizzi's got a good track history and some stuff. I worried about that with Anthony Weaver. I worry about that with even if Joe Brady comes in, like, who's he going to call in his
younger guys?
You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Like, So I don't think that people should take it that, man, if McCarthy is ending up being the guy, that there is a lot of downside in that. And when he was offensive coordinator back in the Saints, which is a long time ago, that's why him and Mickey Loomis they put up top 10 offenses. They were playing gangbusters on offense back in those years, right? And didn't always lead to success and stuff. But McCarthy is a smart guy. He's a guy that can come in, at least keep the team from sinking, right? Like, and I think that's the biggest thing, is that right now this team is kind of in limbo. Your salary cap situation is what it is, but it is still a very bad look to show that you're not even getting the time of day from certain guys that you supposedly had an in with, that they have not even come to the table. And nothing has been set up with Mike McCarthy yet. There is nothing definitive on that. So he could just say, "Nah, I'm good, fam. I'm going to just take off a year and maybe come back the next coaching cycle when something else is open." Could work that way.
Do the Sean Payton thing, right? Like, step away from the team, right?
Yeah.
Just like Sean did, step away from the Cowboys, take a year, and then come back again after about a season. I wouldn't, honestly, I'm going to be honest with you, man, I wouldn't be surprised by that. To all intents and purposes, like, everything suggests that there's mutual interest there between the Saints and Mike McCarthy. But I'm curious how much, like, the Aaron Glenn one's not as surprising, because we all knew that he preferred the Jets job no matter what, right? That the Jets job was his top job. Like, that was pretty clear. But like, the Joe Brady thing is a little different. Now, he's going back to a really good situation in Buffalo, but you're also passing on you're passing on a head coach opportunity to continue to be an offensive coordinator. So technically the Saints would have had the leverage as the place that could have provided him a promotion. But like, when you see that, like, does a Mike McCarthy go, red flag? Like, I've been around long enough to kind of see, like, oh, they couldn't get the guys that they had in their building back in their building. And then all of a sudden he just kind of like sits back for a year. You know what I mean? I think, like, that's the thing that I'm really interested in seeing next for New Orleans is Joe Brady the last one to say, no, I'm going to stick with where I'm at? Or does Kellen Moore do it and stay with Philly? Yeah. I think Cliff Kingsbury's going to do it, because I don't know. I have a hard time seeing why Cliff Kingsbury would leave that situation in Washington for just about any job. There might be one or two jobs. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like, if like Andy Reid retired and then Cliff Kingsbury sees an opportunity to go work with Patrick Mahomes in Kansas City, then sure. You know what I mean? But like, that's what I imagine. That's the caliber of job I imagine that it would take. So I don't see Kingsbury doing that. And so I'm just curious about, like, have we seen the last of the about faces for New Orleans? Because if you start to see more, then that's where I think you're really, I mean, I think this is telling already, but I think at that point it's not telling anymore. It's yelling, right? It's loud. Yeah. It's going to be really, really hard to ignore if you're the New Orleans Saints.
And if I'm Kellen Moore, I mean, I've got a good thing in the Eagles. Like, I got Saquon Barkley and Jalen Hurts. I think I'm good. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? And you look at their receiving, like, there is so much investment that needs to be done in New Orleans. Like, this is not just a quick come in and fix the team process. Like, I get their mindset is, oh, we just need this piece or this couple of pieces. No, you don't. You need way more than just a couple of pieces. Your defense needs a makeover. You got to get a legit third playmaker in the wide receiver spot. You got to get a better offensive line on the interior. There are so many areas that this team has got to upgrade that I just don't think it's as simple as somebody coming in and saying, all right, well, we just got the right coach in here. Now we can go win football games. I don't think that at all, because all of the staff, I mean, Clint Kubiak, now, like, he interviewed, with the Browns, they didn't go for him. Seahawks, he had a second interview. Now the Texans job with Bobby Slowick, that was interesting. That tie makes sense. Obviously, he could potentially go to Houston, but we said plenty of times, it doesn't look like he's coming back. Right. And so I don't know how much of the staff is going to end up coming back. And look, I think if you're a Saints fan, this is really concerning. Right. And look, I think there's other candidates that could end up coming to the table. Of course, we've when we did our tier ranking, we put John Gruden on there. I wouldn't expect John Gruden, because here's the thing: nobody's talked to John Gruden this hiring cycle, which means I don't think the Saints would even flirt with it. Right? Like, I just don't think it. If other teams would have said, "Oh, we're going to bring in John Gruden for interview," nope. Same probably could be said about Brian Flores. I just don't know if Brian Flores is going to get a shot either. Vance Joseph could be another one to keep an eye out on too if something doesn't happen, but from a directional standpoint, from where this team needs to go and their head coach opening and stuff, McCarthy seems like the guy, or it's Darren Rizzi at this point. I just don't know if I leave if I'm Kellen Moore. I don't know if I leave if I'm Cliff Kingsbury. Anthony Weaver, we've talked about him. I love his style. I think he's maybe not necessarily ready, but what does his job look like after this, coaching cycle? Does he go back to Miami? Does he do something different? Does he come over the Saints and be a defensive coordinator?
Right.
I don't know. That could be a potential interesting thing. Same thing with Mike Kafka. I don't know. Like, that would be interesting if they had McCarthy and then Kafka and Anthony Weaver on their staff.
Right.
Just saying. I'm not telling you that's what's going to happen, but at the same time, I just think that when you look at all the layers and look at how this landscape is, it really is, here's your option A, your option B, and holy crap, if you have to go to the other options there, maybe there's really something wrong here.
Yeah, especially because you're already down 2 options, right? Like you've already kind of, I don't think they're at the point where they're scraping the bottom of the barrel here, because I think that would be insensitive to say about guys like Anthony Weaver, Darren Rizzi, and others who are still solid hires if the team decides to go those directions. But I'm curious, like how much further down you can go without adding potential names to your list. And like, you're up against the clock at this point too, because after you're done hiring your head coach, you got to fill out all of the assistants and the coaching staff and all those other things. And so this is now getting to a point to where if you get too far along here, then all of a sudden it doesn't matter the Rolodex that coach has for potential assistant hires and coordinator hires and stuff like that. If they're not available, they're not available. Like we saw how quickly Robert Saleh went from being a guy that was under consideration in Jacksonville and had interviewed in Dallas to just saying, okay, I'm going over to San Francisco. Like it was the same night that everything else happened. You know what I mean? And so that's got to be the other thing in this equation too, is that there is still a ticking clock if you consider the idea of building out a coaching staff, unless you plan to keep your coaching staff intact. But I can't imagine that there's not going to be some core changes to what this coaching staff will look like in 2025.
Yeah. And the thing is, look, Senior Bowl, everybody meets with everybody, right? Like that's just something I'm going to put out here right now. Everybody meets with everybody. So it's not a big deal. So I don't necessarily worry about the head coach not being in place next week by the Senior Bowl, right? But if you don't have anybody a couple weeks before the combine, then I'm a lot more concerned, because then what's going to end up happening is you're going to have a coach that comes in and has to rely on what the Saints say, right? And you may get a player that you don't want, right? Necessarily if you're a head coach. Now, Jeff Ireland, obviously it's not a shot at what they do in the front office, but this is also another thing that we talked about is now you have 6 heads in this office that are getting the next head coach, and it's kind of like too many Chiefs, not enough Indians type thing. You know what I mean? Like I get the brain trust, but at the same time, I think if I'm a new head coach, I don't know that I want to work with that. Like I don't want 6 different bosses. You know what I'm saying? Like, and I'm not saying it would be that case, but I just don't think so. But I don't think, again, for fans, it's not like, the alarm's up, the red flag's up. I just don't think we've hit the panic button just yet. Now that could be, everybody can be like, no, we have hit the panic button and stuff. I would say that if McCarthy pulls out completely and says McCarthy's like, no, I'm not going to do that. Sure. Then I would hit the panic button. I still think there's other good candidates and stuff, but that means probably, okay, well, clearly we'll just go back to Darren Rizzi, which I wouldn't be upset
again,
at that.
I don't hate
the whole thing.
Yeah.
I don't either. I know some people are
actually,
like,
better than don't hate it. I kind of like it.
I mean, look, when you get Alvin Kamara endorsing you as a guy, I mean, I think that's pretty good. And, I saw some people saying, well, yeah, they said the same thing about Dennis Allen. I don't remember seeing a whole lot of that, like not from Alvin Kamara.
I can't,
you know what I mean?
I can't remember that.
Maybe there's some guys, but anyways, so interesting stuff with the coaching stuff. Obviously with some of the other things we talked about a little bit in the Senior Bowl, but before we talk too much about this coaching stuff, this Derek Carr thing that came up.
Yeah.
I've seen Photoshop after Photoshop of him in a Giants uniform. The bottom line for everybody who doesn't know or who is just too gullible to just look at something and say, oh, the Giants are trading for Derek Carr. It was just a suggestion that the Giants were going to have everything on the table and then they might inquire. Derek Carr has a no trade clause right now. The Saints have to make a decision on him. They have the 3rd day of the new league year to make that decision. They still have time. Derek Carr has to waive that no trade clause for sure. But if they move on from Derek Carr, maybe, or if they try to figure out a way to trade. But as of right now, it's just speculation. That is not true. Stop saying it's true. I know people want it to be true, but it's just simply not true right now.
Yeah. It was a piece that was kind of exploring like what the future of the quarterback position in New York would look like. And as John mentioned, it was speculation. I do think that the speculation sets up the factual conversation that the Saints could hire a head coach that doesn't want to work with Derek Carr. I think that's and so that was the thing that I took, because I took this and I discussed this on Locked On Saints as well. And I did it less as like, this is a report, but more as a like, look, this sets up a real conversation around, let's just say Cliff Kingsbury takes an interview with the Saints, and let's just say Cliff Kingsbury takes the job with New Orleans. The style of quarterback that he's worked with is not equal to the play style of Derek Carr, like by any imagination. Right. You can be the biggest Derek Carr fan you want to be, but he's a different style quarterback than Jaden Daniels. He's a different style quarterback than, Caleb Williams and Baker Mayfield and Johnny Manziel and all these other guys, Kyler Murray. Like, he's just different, right? And so that's the situation where, a coach comes in and says, hey, thank you, I'm excited to be here. However, I'm not keen on working with this quarterback. Could we potentially try to work out a trade for him? And can you go and get me Justin Fields or something like that? And then that's at the point to where the team goes to Derek Carr and says, hey, are you willing to waive your no trade clause? This isn't going to be a good fit in the new offense. So we'd like to make a move. And honestly, like, not a lot of quarterbacks are going to say, no, I'll stick around and play for the coach that doesn't want me. Not a lot of quarterbacks are going to make that decision. And if they do, you question that a little bit. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so, I think that that's the thing that you're looking at when it comes down to that whole situation, is like, there is a real conversation to be had about the potential of a head coach showing up, not wanting to work with Derek Carr, and then the ripple effect of what that could create.
Yeah. And sorry, y'all, I'm kind of borderline dying, I guess, because of my cough that I have. I said that's why I was drinking this hottie toddy at first and stuff. So I apologize if you're hearing coughs on it. But you're right. Like, you threw out, like, Justin Fields is a popular one, right? I said Jimmy Garoppolo at one point. I've also said Josh Dobbs. I'm not saying that they are the greatest solution for it, but I'm also thinking in terms of what they can afford, what they could potentially get from somebody. I'm not telling you that that's absolutely what they have to do or what they can do or something, but it would be that type of option, that kind of tier, right? Like, you are practically in that boat. And look, a lot can change, right? There's always players that get released prior to free agency that you're like, whoa, I didn't know that was going to happen, or a post-June first move or anything like that. Saints are going to be one of them. It's just going to happen, right? And so anyways, I say all that to say, the Derek Carr thing is one thing. And again, it brings up a point where, again, on the surface, Mickey Loomis has said that they're not saying you have to keep any of these people or this staff. You're going to have authority, but it does make you wonder a little bit, right? Like, we're not going to move on from Derek Carr. Okay. We're not going to trade Cam. We're not going to trade Tyre. We're not going to trade DeMario. If you're making those types of, I don't say ultimatums, but you're basically saying, here's your guidelines for accepting this job, the deck's kind of already stacked against you, where it's like, okay, I got to inherit the situation no matter what, right? And so I saw something in the chat from Brian talking about running this coaching staff back, which they can. Like, I don't think that there's any realm of possibility. They're going to have a new defensive coordinator. They're going to have to have new position coaches. They're going to have to do some of these things. Like, if Clint Kubiak leaves to go to Houston, John Benton probably goes with him, the offensive line coach, right? Like, I just think that's probably smart. I think Derek Foster is a guy I'd like to keep around at the running back room. I'd like to keep Keith Williams around. I'd love Andrew Janoko if he could stay around in the quarterback's room. Defensively, maybe they need a fresh start everywhere, right? Like, I know that the players like Brian Young, but for me, you got to develop Isaiah Foskey, right? Like, he's going into bust territory, right? Like, I know he's already been in a couple of years now, but this guy plays special teams and he's his second rounder. Somebody's got to come in here and develop him. And clearly that guy wasn't Todd Grantham. Like, he wasn't teaching up anybody anything.
No.
So no wonder Isaiah Foskey didn't do anything, and all he did was play special teams. Like, that is baffling that you have a coach that comes in. And look, that's another reason why I like the CEO type coach, because clearly DA just was the keep doing what you're doing, and he had no idea or no pulse on what anybody was doing, right? Like, Cam Jordan's playing 10 snaps. Isaiah Foskey can't see the field. Well, what's your common denominator? Your defensive line coach isn't doing anything. Okay. Just like go do what you got to do out there. Come on. Like, that doesn't make any sense.
Men, if you've lost your hair, it doesn't mean you can't find it again. Try Hims Hair Loss Solutions and you'll be joining hundreds of thousands of subscribers who found their hair again. It can be hard for men to deal with hair loss, even though it is common. Luckily, I'm here to provide you with a solution so you don't even have to talk about it. Through Hims, you can restore your hair by accessing their personalized hair loss solutions. Men value many different things about their appearance. But if you're a guy who really cares about your hair and find that it's slowly going away, you might be feeling discouraged when you look in the mirror. And that's where Hims comes in. Check out their personalized hair loss solutions, and you can start seeing your hair grow back in as little as 3 to 6 months. Hims provides you with convenient access to a range of hair loss treatments that work, all from the comfort of your couch. Hims makes treating hair loss simple with doctor-trusted options and clinically proven ingredients, like finasteride and minoxidil that can regrow hair in as little as 3 to 6 months. Choose from personalized chewable, oral, spray, and serum treatments to find what works best for you. The process is simple and 100% online, so there are no uncomfortable doctor visits. Answer a few questions and a medical provider will determine if treatment is right for you. If prescribed, your treatment is sent directly to you for free. No insurance is needed, and one low price covers everything from treatments to ongoing care. Hims has hundreds of thousands of trusted subscribers. And they can help you get your confidence back too with visibly thicker and fuller hair. Start your free online visit today at hims.com/Hail Mary. That's HIMS.com/Hail Mary for your personalized hair loss treatment options. hims.com/Hail Mary. Results may vary, based on studies of topical and oral minoxidil and finasteride. Prescription products require an online consultation with a healthcare provider who will determine if a prescription is appropriate. Restrictions apply. See website for full details and important safety information.
Are you 50 or older? This news is for you. The CDC now recommends you get vaccinated against pneumococcal pneumonia. Even if you're healthy, your age puts you at risk. People 50 or older are over 6 times more likely to be hospitalized with pneumococcal pneumonia compared to adults 18 to 49. Just one shot can help protect you. Learn more and schedule at vaxassist.com. That's VAXassist.com. Sponsored by Pfizer.
Yeah, that was such a wild situation in terms of all that. Because it's like, especially if you're the defensive minded head coach and you're not jumping to fix that situation. And it gets to a point where Cam Jordan's so frustrated by it that he starts to talk about, talking to his agent about a trade after his dad suggests a potential trade. He starts telling the coaching staff, like, Todd Grantham does not talk to me directly anymore. You know what I mean? Like, woof, man. Like, and there's no way that just happened week 9. Like, that had to be something that's been building up over the course of the last season and a half or whatever that Todd Grantham's been around. And so, like, it was all bad from the very beginning when it came to all that. So very, very not great situation when
not
it
great,
comes
Bob.
not great, Bob, when it came down to all that. But no, I agree. I think that there's like a lot of the coaching staff that still sees a change, especially over on the defensive side. Like, once you bring in a new defensive coordinator, that defensive coordinator is going to want to bring in their people that they want to work with. And then that's going to change what the defensive coaching staff looks like. The offensive coaching staff, like you mentioned, is really interesting. And I think that comes down to, are they hiring an offensive minded head coach like a Mike McCarthy? Then the ripple effects kind of come from there. So we'll see which way that all goes. But I don't think there's a lot of run it back options. Like, even if the Saints were to hire Darren Rizzi, you still need a new defensive coordinator.
I think you got to
Clint Kubiak's probably still, heading somewhere else or whatever. And so, like, you're still changing things even in that situation. So if Darren Rizzi offers change, then the rest of these other guys that are coming as external hires will also offer greater change than that.
And look, Darren Rizzi had a plan. Like, he knew going in what he would fix on this team. And I'm sure a lot of it centered around the coaching staff and all this. But, talking about Cam, now everything, like, his reaction after that Panthers game was just like, everything made so much sense right after that. You know what I'm saying? It's just like, yeah, of course. You're not going to play me or anything like that. So got some super chats in here. Thank you, Ask a Bum. It says, when a first time head coach turns you down, you got problems. And then he's thrown out Matt Eberflus for DC hard. So thank you. Yeah, it is a bad look, right? Like Aaron Glenn was not a head coach. And look, I don't want to open up this can of worms, but if you think like it's hard for me to envision that Aaron Glenn would go in there and tell Mickey Loomis, I don't want you to be the guy, and make that demand when he's never been a head coach. Like if I was Mike McCarthy or Pete Carroll making that demand, okay. But Aaron Glenn going there and saying like, I'm not working with Mickey Loomis, that might be one thing, but to suggest that Mickey Loomis might not be in role, like I need Mickey out, I don't know that I believe that, right? Like, and so, but yes, it is a tough look when a first-time head coach doesn't give you the time of day, right? Like Ben Johnson clearly was not even on the radar, right? And there's a bunch of them that just don't want to have anything to do with it, and I get that. So, your thoughts on that? And then what about Matt Eberflus?
Yeah, Eberflus is really interesting, but I think we got to wait and see just how far they go down the road when it comes to the Cowboys. I think the Cowboys have been like super interested in him and all this stuff. So we'll have to see. But this is the thing, right? They won't be able to pursue a defensive coordinator until they have a head coach. And so this is part of the ticking clock, right? It's a good idea to pursue him as a defensive coordinator. He will be a better defensive coordinator than a head coach. And I think that people would be really disappointed if they heard the name because of how poorly he performed as a head coach with the Chicago Bears. But he's a very, very good defensive coordinator. And so he's another one of those better coordinator than head coach types in that situation. So not a bad pursuit at all, but the clock is ticking when it comes to all that. On the Mickey Loomis front, I think it's interesting, right? Like you have to look at, I think that the public will look at Jacksonville, who had Liam Cohen in the bag, or at least had him as a finalist. He ends up going back to Tampa. They fire their general manager, and then all of a sudden, Liam Cohen sneaking off in the middle of the night to go and see the Jacksonville Jaguars, and then taking a head coaching job there. And so I think like you look at that situation, and I think a lot of people are going to be like, "Hey, wait a minute, that just happened with Jacksonville. Could that happen with New Orleans?" I don't think it does, because I don't think the Saints are going to go that route. I think that they want to give Mickey Loomis the opportunity to hire the next head coach, see how the cycle goes, and then make that decision based on that. But I got to tell you, this is worst case scenario for Mickey Loomis to start seeing some of these people that he's already connected to walking away, like not even coming to the city. And so I think that that's the bottom line of it. And so, it doesn't reflect very well. And especially like not just because those guys are first-time head coaches, but because those are first-time head coaches looking for their first opportunity, having the connectivity with the organization. And then one of them, it's the only opportunity left for this coaching cycle. And he says, no, I'm good. Like to me, like that's the big thing. So I do think that reflects on the top, because where else can it reflect, right? You can't blame that on a head coach because there's no head coach. You can't blame that on an offensive coordinator or a defensive coordinator or a quarterback because they have nothing to do with the situation. This only reflects on the organization and the people that represent at the top of it. And so like the validity and fairness of the criticism is there when it comes to a situation like this. And I don't think that that's wrong to say. I don't even think the Saints would be mad about that. Like, it's like, like when criticism's fair, right? Yes. So at this point, like there's only one place for these types of situations to reflect. And so for the Saints, it's about what they do next, right? What happens next? Do they start seeing more people back out? Because then that continues to reflect, or do they get kind of like back on track and start getting these interviews continuing to go? Or do they finish their coaching search with 3 in-person interviews?
Yeah. I mean, the criticism is valid. It's been valid for a long time, right? Because, again, going back to the Dennis Allen hire, what were you promising? Continuity, that he was going to pick up exactly where Sean Payton left off. Nope. And I get the injuries. That's what you want to hide behind and talk of that was the problem. You didn't have but 1 or 2 defensive starters that were gone for the year. What happened? Did DA just not know how to coach and run a team at the same time? Like, I mean, there's so many things that lay to it that you've kind of made this bed and shot yourself in the foot. Like the criticism on the Saints, like it is valid. Like the salary cap stuff, it is valid because this team kicks the can down the road and it doesn't produce a winner. If they were getting to the postseason, then nobody cares. But you're not in the postseason. You did all this restructuring to get 5-12. That's not something to flex on. Like it doesn't matter. You can't flex on that. Ross, can you head coach?
I don't think anybody wants that.
Only in Madden, man.
No one wants me to be a head coach. You'll fall in love with me very quickly when I start making a bunch of bad decisions that I think are the right decisions. But
GM maybe. Who knows? It could be a GM or something like that. Who knows? I doubt that too. But I don't envy those people that have. But I tell you what, Jacksonville getting rid of Trent Baalke, that was one of the best moves they could have done. I cannot. Oh yeah, no doubt. They were holding on to him, and then they finally got rid of him. I was like, it's about time. That's all I could say.
Yep.
Yeah. Even he don't want to build on Joe Brady. I don't even want to deal with the Well, Joe Brady, thank you for tuning into our show. We know you got more important things to do, like trying to upset the Chiefs tomorrow. Please, Buffalo, do it. Buffalo, Washington. That's my Super Bowl pick. Please make it come true. Without playing spoilers. So but funny. Yeah. Anyways, but yeah, thanks, Joe Brady. Appreciate that. Who that Cats fan asked, which guy would you like to see get the job at this point? You kind of said it, leaning McCarthy, but he was like sixth on his list at one point. I mean, when we did our tier ranker, we put him in the A tier because I think he's somebody that can come in and run a program. And as obviously, I don't think it could sink, but there are going to be struggles. Like if they went with Mike McCarthy, even with the shape of the roster and everything that's going on, he may only turn in a 6-10, 6-11 season, right? Like it might be that good. Like I still think, even if they would have got Aaron Glenn, I still think the best they could have done is a 7-10. I don't think they got anything better than
it wouldldn't have been fixed in 2020
unless they knocked the draft out of the park and they fixed the 10 issues on this team in the offseason with free agency and stuff. I just don't see it, yo. I just don't. And so I still think that this is going to be struggle bus, and we're going to be talking the next offseason and be like, yep, well, Saints were out of it a long time ago. And whether that's fair, unfair, prove everybody wrong. You know what I'm saying? Like the talking at this point is nobody cares what the talk says. Just go out and do it. And you got a tough schedule ahead of you. So I don't know. Yeah. That's all.
Yeah.
McCarthy's so probably your guy right now.
I'm still like Weaver or Rizzi. Personally, okay. I like McCarthy too. Don't get me wrong. I'm not trying to say that. I want to be really clear. I'm not saying that McCarthy would be a bad hire.
No,
or anything like that. That's not what I'm saying. But I still think that this team could stand that this team could stand change. And I don't know how much change you really get from Mike McCarthy as opposed to bringing Mike McCarthy in and then really kind of just trying to keep the ship afloat for a few years. You know what I mean? And maybe that's an unfair assessment of Mike McCarthy. That might be because, again, he's the only head coach option that the Saints have that has a winning record on his career and that has a Super Bowl ring in the process. So there is that to consider. But I still like the alpha mentality of an Anthony Weaver, who's also an incredibly smart football person. You know what I mean? Who can come in and kind of and do all that. I don't mind the idea of a Darren Rizzi. And in fact, I still think Darren Rizzi can be a good head coach in the NFL. He's in the right situation. I just don't know if this is going to be the right situation for his time as a first time, to be a full blown head coach, not an interim and everything like that. But so I'm kind of in between those three guys. I think any of those three, I kind of had said the same thing when it was Joe Brady. It was Joe Brady, Mike McCarthy, Darren Rizzi, Anthony Weaver, it was a tier for me as opposed to a single hire. So I kind of lean a little bit more Rizzi, Weaver, but McCarthy's right there too, and everything. So I'm kind of in a tier group or a cloud, if you will.
Yeah. And look, when I wrote about it, playing GM for the Saints, I don't know how many, a month ago, maybe, or something like that, I put Anthony Weaver. I just think that, again, somebody unfamiliar to this team, a John Harbaugh tree. He's been a former player. He's cut his teeth in his league. And again, look at his stats, look at the actual results in some of this. Cause a lot of people would just say, I don't know this guy. So no, he can't be the coach or anything. You don't know anything about him. His defense statistically in a lot of categories with the Dolphins was way better than Aaron Glenn's, leaps and bounds better than what Dennis Allen had. The only thing with going to Anthony Weaver is the Saints are going to have to change to 3-4. They just are, because that's what Weaver runs, is a 3-4. He ran it in Houston. He ran it in Miami. He was part of it in Baltimore. That's the only biggest concern I have is, the Saints would have to flip their defense practically. And I don't know that they have the personnel to do that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They'd have to really figure that one out.
Yeah. It'd take a couple of off seasons, but I also think that it would be a wise decision to switch to a 3-4. Personally,
I agree.
I think that, I'm right there with you. Cause I just think that that's what's going to, Miami allowed the second fewest rushing yards to quarterbacks in the NFL in 2024, despite having Josh Allen in their division. You know what I mean? And those things. It was one of the best third down defenses in the league, one of the best red zone defenses in the league, stuff like that. Like, I think that those are the things that I think stand out for me as like the situational stuff, as well as dealing with the mobile quarterback and everything. And look, no one's good at dealing with mobile quarterbacks in the NFL. Everybody struggles with it, but some struggle less. And Miami was one of the defenses that struggled less. And that had a lot to do with, Weaver.
Yeah. And I mean, imagine if they had the 3-4 and Bond was still here. Golly, it's like Bond was good at something.
You mean defensive player of the year finalist, Zach Bond?
Yes, I do. The salt in the wound. Again, like the jokes write themselves. Like you cannot just sit here and say, "Oh, we had them in the building and all this other stuff. We drafted them and all that." Well, you did use them. It's like having
Jeff Ireland can. Jeff Ireland can say that.
That's right. But like,
hey,
you basically said, I bought my new toy and I'm just going to keep it up in the box in there. Oh, I might take it out a little bit here and there, but by the time it's time to actually use it, you're not going to use it. You just sell it.
Right.
And, yeah, stupid. Whatever. Molly, thank you for the important update. My Red Wings are actually turning the quarter. They fired Derek Lalonde. Hey, coaching matters, right? Imagine
there
that.
You go.
They are on a little bit of a hot streak, so good to know they are up 1-0. Ask a bum, man. Thank you for the super test. No, I think that's salt in the wound. Bringing back in DC.
I think that ship has sailed, my friend.
Way too fresh. Like I just don't. Like it worked for Denver, like Vance Joseph. It's going to work for Robert Saleh and all this other stuff. But the Saints, just go watch what Alvin Kamara had to say without saying anything about the interview. All these other things, like, come on, it would not do that. Like Indianapolis wasn't on a radar. Chicago's apparently honed in on him right now. So I don't know. He's going to be a DC. We know that.
And he's going to be a good one.
Yeah, they're not going to be in New Orleans. Yeah, they'll be a good one.
He's probably going to be a good one. He was a very good defensive coordinator here. I think he'll be able to continue that if he can, deal with the mobile quarterbacks and all that kind of stuff. But I don't think you're going to see Dennis Allen back in New Orleans unless they're on the schedule for him. That's the only way you're going to see him back around here.
Yeah. And at that point, it would be up in Chicago because that's where they play if he goes to Chicago.
Right. Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. Leandra, thank you for the comment. Yes, my hair is grown out. I have not done anything with it. It will be cut before the Senior Bowl, but it is long. Like I'm talking like super long and all this other stuff. I've got like pretty boy vibes going on, which whatever. Anyways. Well, Ross, we've talked about a good bit on this show, and golly, time flies. We've got a whole bunch of people tuning in. Is there anything that we kind of missed on this thing? I mean, the coaching thing is big. Derek Carr thing is big. Giving our 2 cents on that. Senior Bowl's around the corner. We will be in Mobile covering the Senior Bowl. That's always a fun time and stuff. But again, everybody meets with everybody. You'll get to see some prospects. The Saints, obviously, I don't think they're going to have as big of a presence there as they have had in previous years. They do have coaches there right now that are going to be there, like more coaches, I think, than they had last year. But, everybody meets with everybody. There's going to be some great prospects to pay attention to. Kind of bummed that we don't get to see some of the Ohio State guys in action and all that other stuff. So I was like, oh, gosh. It's okay. It's okay. But, what do we miss? Anything? I'm sure.
No, I don't think so. I think the Saints have 4 coaches that are going to be on the Senior Bowl staff. There's somebody with wide receivers, somebody with offensive line. That'll be Jari Evans, which is super cool for Jari, which would be awesome. There's somebody with linebackers, and they'll have somebody with quarterbacks, Jordan Trailer, and everything. So those are the 4 positions that they'll get really, really close looks at. One of their candidates for head coach, Mike Kafka, is also coaching one of the teams at the Senior Bowl too. So if they were to hire Mike Kafka, they get a look at everybody really up close and personal. I would expect that like Jeff Ireland and the scouting team will probably be there in Mobile. And so wouldn't be surprised to see those guys around, and then maybe some of the coaching staff around as well. But that's probably it. We'll do some stuff from Mobile to kind of keep you up to date with what we're seeing at practices and things like that, what we're hearing, which I think is really kind of the big part of the Senior Bowl, is that it's a big rumor mill. And so we'll be able to kind of parse a lot of that stuff out to you. But I think those are kind of the biggest things. I mean, I think the biggest thing right now for New Orleans is, where does the head coaching search go next? And that's just, unfortunately, the Saints are just in and us and you are in a wait and see pattern to see kind of where that goes next.
Yeah, 2 years ago is when they traded Sean Payton to Denver. I remember that being at that Senior Bowl practice, and it was like, oh gosh, got to go to work and all that stuff. So, you never know what's going to happen, and they're going to be busy on that. And then Mike Kafka, just one other tidbit note, he coached the East-West Shrine Bowl last year, so now it's good to see him move into the Senior Bowl. Again, Patrick Mahomes had really good things to say about him. Same thing with Andy Reid, but again, we'll see. I don't know that's the direction they'd go, and I think what we said on our past episodes, again, don't forget to like, subscribe, but go back to our tier maker episode on the coaches. And we told you why we had concerns about Mike Kafka. And it's not about his character. It's just more about what he did at Kansas City. Was that him, Patrick Mahomes, or Andy Reid? You know what I'm saying? Right. And so again, and he did great that first year with the Giants as an offensive coordinator. They were top 10 in a lot of categories, but the next year they were dead last to bottom of the league in it, and then he got his play calling duty stripped away from him by Brian Dabble. So that's one of those things.
Who did not do well with them, by the way. Brian Dabble.
Yeah, it happens. One question too before we close to get out of here. Draft question: if the Saints do pick at 9 or trade out, I don't see him trading out. Mickey Loomis is the GM. I don't see him trading out. Jeff Ireland's still here. They're not trading out. But stick at 9. Who's your most realistic pick there? I'd say position-wise for me, we probably can agree it's either edge or wide receiver. I think maybe. I don't know if I'd say anything else besides that.
I'd put corner in there too. If Will Johnson
corner would be interesting. Yeah, he got mocked by Mel Kiper on that one. That'd be interesting. Depends if they bring a Debo back or not.
I like the visual image. I like the visual image of Will Johnson being mocked by Mel Kiper. I love that. I think it's challenging because here's the other thing, and this is why the draft is so fun. Like, we know who's scheduled to pick 1 through 8, but we don't know who's actually picking 1 through 8.
Right.
And so that changes everything too, right? Like a wide receiver needy team trades into the top 8, and then all of a sudden Tedero and McMillan's off the board at 7. When he could have been on the board at 9 potentially, then all of a sudden like the conversation's different and stuff like that. So it's a little bit challenging, but I think names that I've seen there a lot would be Tedero McMillan, the wide receiver at Arizona, who for me is like the number 1 prospect for the Saints, like on my personal board, Ross's personal.
I would absolutely agree.
Yeah. So I'd have to put him there. Abdul Carter out of Penn State, although he probably goes very early.
I was going to say, if he fell, yes, I'd probably put
Carter. But look, last year, right, we talked about, guys like Tui Pelotu and some of these other like edge rushers, Jared Verse and stuff like that were supposed to go off the board in the top 10, and they were still on the board when the Saints were picking at 14 because the first defensive guy didn't go until 15. Right. So you never know. Right. And like the way that teams trade up and the ripple effects that come from that, and who picks, who doesn't actually pick, who trades back, like that changes everything. So like we could sit here right now in January and say like this player won't be there. I think there's really only 3 players though that I would solidly say won't be available when the Saints are on the board. And that's both the quarterbacks, Cam Ward, Shedeur Sanders, and then Travis Hunter. Outside of that, as far as I'm concerned, anything is possible for this year's draft. And that's what happens when you don't have like a super like quarterback heavy draft and all these other things. So I would say like those names are there. Tyler Warren, the tight end out of Penn State. I'm very anti tight end in the first round, but it's the way that you can go. But there's really, really good tight ends in the 2nd and 3rd rounds and 4th round and 5th round that you can also find in this year's draft.
Mason Foster. Excuse me. Sorry.
Did I say Foster?
I said Mason Foster.
Oh, Mason. Like Mason Taylor.
Mason Foster. Why do I keep saying, man? Golly, I always get his name mixed up.
But yeah, he was the guy later. Harold Fannin Jr. out of Bowling Green, Mitchell Evans out of Notre Dame, like Gunnar Helm out of Texas. Like there's a bunch. There's a ton of tight ends in this.
Yes, absolutely.
And so that's the way that I look at that. Ashton Jeanty, the running back out of Boise State. Like I'm typically not for running backs in the first round, but just watching the impact of running backs over the course of the playoffs and this season, seeing the way that offenses are running through their running backs again as we shift and change and all those other things. And to me, Ashton Ginty isn't just a running back. He's a game changer. He's a playmaker. He's a game breaker. And if I could name 3 things that the New Orleans Saints need, it's playmakers, game changers, and game breakers, because they don't have any on their roster. And so that's one of the reasons why I would highlight him too. So, and then there's the edge rushers and stuff like that. So like, there's a lot that you can do at 9. It's going to be hard to do it wrong. You can do it wrong, but it's going to be hard to do it wrong in this year's draft.
Yeah, I don't disagree there. Sonny asked about all line. I don't think I think tackles are fine. Interior, I'm not using a 9th pick for interior.
Right.
Just not.
Yeah.
I think I can get somebody in the 2nd round for that. Just to answer that one. Rex, we answered that about McCarthy sitting out a year. We did talk about that earlier in the pod for sure. So definitely. Rex says your hair is on fire, Ross. But
wait a minute.
Yeah, I don't know about that. Man. Let's see. A good question before we do get out of here. Is there a coach hire that you would instantly consider a fail?
John Gruden.
Yeah. Price is right, losing horn there. Yeah.
I'm sorry, but like, you were just not in a situation to handle that baggage. You know what I mean? Like, you're not in a situation to navigate that.
Yeah, you don't want to pile on. You don't want to pile on to your already bad look from the outside looking in right now.
You got enough.
You just don't.
You got enough going on.
Yeah. Well, Ross, I know we're going to be in Mobile and all that good stuff, but what you got coming up on Locked On and Louisiana Sports as we kind of wrap up here?
Yeah, so starting the Senior Bowl previews as soon as the head coaching stuff stops and calms down a little bit. I think that the other thing, I just dropped a list of 40 prospects that I'm going to be watching at the Senior Bowl. As much as you can watch 40 prospects over the course of 6 practices over the course of 3 days, like don't get me wrong, but like, there's a lot of really, really good talent as the Senior Bowl continues to get better and better and better every year. No surprise there. Yep. But a lot of really, really good talent here. And so, so I think that, like, that's going to be the focus moving forward, is going to be looking at that. And then the other thing I want to look at too is what does it mean for the New Orleans Saints to hire somebody short-term and do a short-term kind of reset in order to be able to sell later for a rebuild? I kind of want to explore that possibility. It's a crappy one for whoever is the guy that gets hired, the guy that gets hired first, but it's a realistic thing that we've seen across the NFL. And so could the New Orleans Saints go that way? So we'll see.
We'll see. Yes, definitely.
Yeah.
That's
what you got coming up.
Well, just, again, we're looking at a little bit of everything. I'm still doing my off-season outlook pieces over there on SI, which, I guess without letting the cat out of the bag and stuff, some things are going to be changing at beginning of February without giving away too much information. So stay tuned for that announcement very soon. Very excited about some of that stuff that's coming down the pipeline. But obviously still be kicking here, doing a whole bunch of things. But until February, that's kind of where things are going, is continue business as normal. And obviously going to look at some Senior Bowl history and put together a cloud of players that I really want to keep and hone in on there. And then before you know it, we'll have the HBCU Legacy Bowl. The Super Bowl is going to be in town. There's going to be a lot of stuff there. And the Combines at the end of the next month. We're, a month away from the Combine just about. It's coming quick. And then after that, they got the owners meeting in about 2 months. Yeah, there you go. Off season for us, y'all. Like, I just, all that stuff. But I'm sorry, Brian, that you can't have this hair. I'd give some away. I'm just happy I still have hair, even if it is graying at my age.
Hey, calm down.
I'll just take that. Yeah, no. Let's not open up that can of worms.
Oh, I'm just happy I've got hair.
I'm just happy to be here. That's all. I'm just scared to don't find me. That type of thing. So, I gave my Super Bowl pick. Who's your Super Bowl pick? Who's winning on Sunday?
Oh, man.
Who do you want to win and who's winning? Because I said I want to win.
I'm going to say I want the Buffalo Bills to win, and the Buffalo Bills will win.
Okay, cool.
So awesome. I'm going to say, I'm not going to doubt myself. Come on now.
I said Buffalo and Washington. It's going to be a retread of the 1991 Super Bowl.
I want that matchup so bad.
I
want that
really
matchup
do too,
so badly.
I just think that, we don't need to see Philadelphia in another Super Bowl. Y'all have had plenty of success in time. It's time for Washington and Jaden Daniels to continue to solidify his rookie year. Tooling for Team Jaden. And then as far as Buffalo, no three-peat. Come on. It's got to stop, right? Like, I think Buffalo can do it. I think Josh Allen can do it. He can solidify his MVP status, all this other good stuff. But that's who I'm rooting for. That's who I think. That's who I say is going to be. And you quote Waterboy. That's who I say is going to be. All that good stuff. But Man, Ross, I appreciate you hopping on, obviously, to do the show and stuff. And guys, thank you for putting up with me and my tuberculosis.
I appreciate you like navigating this cough.
Yeah, I sound like a smoker, but I don't smoke. But yeah. But guys, thank you so much for tuning in and all this good stuff to Second and Saints. Don't forget to hit the like, subscribe button. Give us some support. A lot of off-season content coming. And again, I promise you want to stay here. A lot of cool things coming down the pipeline. Some stuff I just can't say, but will be coming soon enough. And Ross and I got some really cool stuff coming up that we can't say, but soon enough.
It's coming. It's coming.
Yes, it's coming. Appreciate you guys. Y'all have a great night, and we will talk to you very soon. Enjoy your Sunday of football. And yeah, we're getting warmer weather, so enjoy that too.
Oh, thank
Have a good one, guys.
Love you.
You're a startup founder. Finding product market fit is probably your number one priority. But to land bigger customers, you also need security compliance. Obtaining your SOC 2 or ISO 27001 certification can open those big doors, but they take time and energy, pulling you away from building and shipping. That's where Vanta comes in. Vanta is the all-in-one compliance solution helping startups get audit ready and build a strong security foundation quickly and painlessly. Vanta automates the manual security tasks that slow you down, helping you streamline your audit. The platform connects you with trusted experts to build your program, auditors to get you through audits quickly, and a marketplace for essentials like pen testing. So whether you're closing your first deal or gearing up for growth, Vanta makes compliance easy. Join over 8,000 companies, including Y Combinator and Techstar startups who trust Vanta. For a limited time, get $1,000 off Vanta at vanta.com/simplify. That's VANTA.com/simplify for $1,000 off.
Taxes was feeling so stuck. Sitting in traffic, squeezing into a parking spot, all to squeeze in getting tax help during your lunch break. Now Taxes is a TurboTax expert who does your taxes for you, while you go about your day getting real-time notifications about their progress and the most money back guaranteed. Now this is Taxes. Intuit TurboTax. Get an expert now on TurboTax.com. Only available with TurboTax Live Full Service, real-time updates only in iOS mobile apps. See guarantee details at TurboTax.com/guarantees.